quick question. When was the last time you watched something happen in Congress and thought to yourself, yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly how I expected that to go? Right. Never. It's always one of two things. Either nothing happens for months and a bill just sits there, nothing changes. Or something happened that absolutely should not have happened. Everybody's furious. Cable news has a field day. And then 6 months, everybody's moved on and nothing still has changed. And if you found yourself asking why does this keep happening this way? Is it broken? Is this on purpose? Or is this just America? Yes. Why, yes. Yes to all three. But here's the thing. I'm not here to explain to you that Congress is a mess. Everybody knows that. I'm here to explain the why. Mechanically, structurally, why the system is built this way and why it's intended to work the exact way it's working. And why a story this week is the perfect case study for all of these things. Welcome to Ashley Please, the podcast where I explain politics the same way I do in the group chat. I'm Ashley Munson, and every week we'll unpack the headlines, make sense of the nonsense, and explain how government actually works. And bonus, we'll give out an Ashley Please award to somebody that collectively made us say, girl, what are you doing? This is part civics class, part podcast, and fully unhinged. Let's get into it. Everybody, welcome to another episode of Ashley Please. Part civics class, part podcast, fully unhinged. I'm your host, Ashley Munson. And as always, thank you guys for watching, for tuning in. I also want to specifically shout out those who have downloaded, subscribed to the first episode, to all the platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and I think I'm on iHeartRadio now. We're trying to figure it out. I will say this though, podcasting is totally different from being on local cable TV and even doing live shows. This is a different beast, and I'm a millennial, so there should be no reason why I can't work technology, but every episode, we getting bigger and better, people. Bigger and better. Before I get started, like I said, I want to thank everybody for watching the first episode, all the feedback. Continue to review, give me shout outs, tag, all the things. I want this to be helpful to somebody that says they're not into politics. They don't do that, although it's doing you, quite literally. This is who this podcast is for. Also, take a moment if you have not subscribed to all the platforms that I have mentioned, because I told you so. Yeah, just simply because of that. I also want to take a moment to start this episode with something that really touched me this past week. So I had the opportunity to lead a conversation at the Rainbow Push Coalition's annual conference. It was last week in the midst of all those crazy tornadoes and storms, but we had a really good turnout of youth come out to this event. So essentially it was an event where young folks can have conversations about what's happening in politics, what's happening in their communities, how do we fix it, what's the narrative, what's the consensus, and how do we move forward. And so I had the honor to facilitate that conversation, and I met a lot of you folks there, and a lot of people came up to me and was like, "You're Ashley." That was weird, and that's not like a humble brag. That's just me, just realizing my impact. And I'm so grateful for all the people that did that, because it let me know that my platforms are reaching some folks. And though I'm only in Chicago and we're trying to build this thing brick by brick, I'm grateful for that too. All the people I had the opportunity to meet. There's some young dope Yep, crazy word. Young dope. What am I trying to say? There are some dope young people out there. And I am encouraged, even though I'm still considered young, right? There are some forms that say 18 through 34. So I'm 34. I'm still on the young side, my God. So us young people, there's some dope us, okay? Now, after September for my birthday, I'm going to have to say I'm in my mid-30s. But until then, young people, we out here doing it, thriving, shining, all the things. So that was the event at Rainbow Push. But I want to take a moment to highlight a conversation that also happened at the conference. So, caveat, it was from the former secretary, Hillary Clinton. And those who know me know I love that lady. Not that she's done everything right, but she represents her resume, her resilience, her endurance. It is something that I truly admire. And for those of you that are like, oh, she likes Hillary. Okay, Ann, y'all like a lot of stuff I don't like. Let me like Hillary and mind my business. Okay. So that's the preface. However, she had a conversation with the CEO director of Rainbow Push, Yusuf, and Yusuf Jackson. And so the conversation was centered around the legacy of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. Rest in peace, man. Thank you for all that you have done. But the conversation was centered around his legacy and how the Clintons were close, cool, worked together, traveled the world, knew each other on a personal tip, but also impacted their relative sectors and had conversations about the happenings of the world and how do they impact what's happening and how do they change the format life and increase better livelihood for us. And so that was the premise of the conversation. But one of the clips that I actually recorded, I want to showcase here because I think Hillary be listening to me. I know the government be watching, but I feel like this clip embodies what I want this show to be. So let's take a break and look at that.
And it's harder because the post-1965 group never saw Dr. King get shot, never saw Medgar Evers, we never saw Jimmy Lee Jackson. We never saw that. And so what's your message to the folks who have been born on second base, like they woke up and thought they had a double sit? That was good. That was good. I think it is up to all of us to figure out ways of telling that story that connect with young people's lives today. And that means that it's not just what worked in the past. It's not just filling our churches. It's not just marching. It's not just having rallies. I think all those are important. But it's also doing more work to communicate on social media because young people are literally on their screens. That's where they get their information. And if there is nobody who is putting forward the argument about why does it matter that the United States Supreme Court just gutted the Voting Rights Act? Why does that matter to you? Why does that matter to you? You're 18, you're 20, you're 28. You're working, you're in school, you're living your life. Why does that matter to you? We have to do a better job in modern language, using modern communications to tell the story that motivated your father or that inspired people like me coming up.
First, let me say, it's Black folks, wherever we go. It's the equivalent of that Spider-Man meme. One Spider-Man is pointing at the other, and the other one is pointing back like, nah, bro, you got it. Nah, bro, you... Because we gonna hype folks up. And also, we gonna do it in the church. Yeah. Tonight, now, whatever the lady was saying. Like, yeah, we gotta fight for one another. Yeah, Hillary, yeah. So that's A. B, I think she expressed what I really want to make the goal of my life is to break it down in a way that it makes sense. And I know that's not always easy. I know there are complex issues, but we have to reach a generation that grew up on technology solely, right? I'm a millennial, so I had the brick Nokia, actually no internet, no phone to dial up that tone was, but the dial up, and then going to brick Nokias, to flip phones, to Apples. Y'all remember the little nano iPods? Crazy work. So we millennials have experienced a lot on the technology front. However, we have generations after us that can't even tell you what a CD is. I gotta stop calling people's folks. I gotta stop calling songs on or albums on Apple music CDs because I'm like, oh, Jasmine Sullivan's CD just came out. Maybe it's not a CD, maybe an EP, but it is an album. But folks don't even know what that really is. So my point in that rant is that we have to reach a generation that grew up differently than a lot of us have. Also, the influences and the pressures are so different than when I was growing up. And so we are trying to not only reach those above us, connect history, ancestors, some of our mothers, our grandparents, try to get wisdom from them, but also learn and adapt to our life and what's happening in our worlds and our careers and climbing the corporate ladder and trying to figure out life, but also reach for those that are under us so we can connect, unite, and build a better future. And I think Hillary encompasses what my goals are for the next years or so, if not the rest of my life, is to reach out to generations where they are so we can figure out how to move forward together. So I wanted to share that clip with y'all because I love her, but also I think what she was sharing was really pretty dope. All right, y'all, let's get straight into it. Welcome to the No Jargon Zone, where we take one concept and explain what it means for civics, citizenship, and the communities we share. Today's concept is how Congress actually works, committees, leadership, and why gridlock is by design and not a malfunction. Let's hop into the first myth. So, most people think when a bill is passed in Congress, it goes this way. A lawmaker has an idea, the bill is presented, they debate on the bill, it passes out of Congress, and the bill is a law or it's not. That's cute. That's Schoolhouse Rock. You remember the bill on Capitol Hill. That was a great show, actually. We probably need to bring that back, run that back. But that's not how it works in real life. In real life, we can start where a bill is introduced. Let me start with, first of all, it's not always the legislator's idea. Some legislators aren't actually smart. Sorry. A lot are. A lot have degrees, a lot have lived experience, but sometimes legislators have bills that come from staff, whether legal, policy, comms, or nonprofits that have been doing the work and need a legislative fix or change, or some special interest groups. You follow the PAC money for some of these folks, you'll understand where the bills come from. We can talk about that in another episode and figure out how you look up where money is going or where the money is coming from and going to these candidates. That would be a great episode. Somebody add that to the to do. I'm talking to myself because there's nobody in here. It's just me. So I'm going to add that to the to do. Back to the conversation. So a bill is introduced and is sent to committee. What is a committee? A committee is a smaller group of legislators that tend to the subject matter at hand. So whether it's judicial committee, whether it's armed services, it could be health, it could be whatever else is in that committee, whatever fits. And so these laws go, these potential laws in the making go to these committees. And so the committees have a committee chair and a vice chair. Usually, the committee chair is the person that has been there for the longest period of time that's a part of that committee. It's not the person that is the smartest in the room. I'm going to say that again. The committee chair is usually the person that has highest rank, that's been there for some time. It is not the smartest person in the room. I've met legislators that don't even read bills. I've had experience. I was chasing down a legislator. I can't share too much, but they were doing what they were doing, and I was trying to contact this person about a bill. They hadn't even read the bill, and the bill was coming up in committee that day. I got real lived experiences here, people. Can't say no names because, blacklist or whatever. But back to the subject at hand. The committee. The committee has a committee chair. They are highest rank, and they decide whether the bill gets called or not. I mean, you can be beefing with the chair of a committee and they just decide not to call your bill. And that sounds super petty, but that's also real life. And maybe not in every state legislature and maybe not in every committee, because there are people, disclaimer, there are legislators that want to get the work done, that want to get bills out of committee, that don't waste taxpayer dollars on both a federal level and a state level, even a local level, whether you have city council people, aldermen that represent you. There are people that take your time seriously. However, there are also legislators that should be working elsewhere. I'll leave it at that. So these committee chairs, these folks want to get the bill out of committee, assuming they have all the right motives and they're not being paid by somebody to stop a bill, or the bill isn't incredibly harmful to a subset of people, community groups, etc. So the bill is debated, and sometimes it moves forward, sometimes it doesn't. So when you hear people say, oh, the bill went to committee and it died, literally, bills die in committee all the time. And as a lobbyist, that's so frustrating because then you have to work magic to try to get it called before the deadline or talk to leadership to get it called. Also, I want to hit on this. We can look at political financial records to see who's getting paid by what group to explain maybe some of the bills that are being presented by a certain legislator, but also it could play into what the party's priorities are. So if there is a supermajority, for instance, I'm in Illinois, there's a supermajority. We have a blue governor, a Democratic governor, and we have a blue House and a blue Senate. Essentially, Republicans don't really need to say anything to get something passed for the most part. And that's what a super majority is. However, when we talk about committee, if it is a Democrat over a committee and say they don't want to get the bill out committee, maybe leadership is putting pressure on that person like, hey, I want this bill out of committee. So these leadership people are Speaker of the House, Senate majority leaders, people that have tenure, people that are subject matter expert. It really depends on what the Speaker of the House wants or what the party's agenda is that a bill gets out of committee. Here is a current congressional story that perfectly illustrates what we just talked about: leadership power, committee politics, congressional structure, etc. Here's the headline. Congress just failed to extend FISA Section 702. FISA is essentially one of the government's most powerful surveillance authority. This failed because of a bipartisan revolt of sorts in the chambers, i.e., meaning Democrats and Republicans working together or on the same page, essentially. So the House voted it down, and the Senate fought against it because of President Trump's appointment of Bill Pulte to acting director of national intelligence. So in layman's terms, on paper, Congress is trying to pass a surveillance law. Behind the scenes, Congress is really fighting about power. So the House tried to fast track this thing. And funny enough, security measures are sometimes the easiest pieces of legislation to get through because you would think trying to protect Americans is a priority. So sometimes they get through because of that narrative. However, the Senate fought against it, specifically Democrats, because of the opposition to the appointment. Now, Republicans opposed it because they do have some privacy concerns. Essentially, leadership said, get this bill passed. They put it on the floor and they got stiffed at the rim, my guy. It fell 218 to 198. Now, let's take a moment to talk about what FISA is. FISA stands for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Specifically, Section 702 allows intelligence authorities, agencies to obtain foreign target information outside of the United States without obtaining the traditional warrant. Now, those who support this say this is our best way of getting info on terrorist threats, cyber threats, hostile government, potential spies, and things like that. Folks that are in opposition basically say, okay, cool. But why do Americans always end up in a group chat? / government doesn't handle authority like this pretty well, i.e., the government's always watching, and I'm gonna be fresh as hell when the Fed's watching, in a psalmist voice. So that is basically the argument they're having. And I think one of the things I want to highlight here is what coverage missed. So I already told y'all, on paper, it's the surveillance law. I think everybody's focused on the surveillance piece, like this is important, whatever. It is. But what's really at play here is power. So I wrote down 5 things I want y'all to capture because this wasn't just over spying. This is over how the mechanics of Congress works, who has power, who has a say. And even though Trump is in power and Republicans essentially are in charge, like there are still rank and file members, there are still folks, both Democrats and Republicans, who still feel a way and can stand up to prevent legislation from passing. So the 5 things I want y'all to remember, if y'all don't remember anything else, is committees can stop legislation. We talked about that today. Party leaders can delay legislation. Individual factions can definitely sink legislation. I'll call them coups. The Senate can block legislation, and the president can veto legislation. So what you saw today was a case of leadership saying, "I want this passed," and the Democrats and some of the Republicans, rank and file members, some leadership, other leadership is basically saying, "Nah, fam, not today." And here we have it, a perfect example of how Congress operates. It's messy. It's frustrating. It's giving real bad girls club. In fact, I think Congress, some of the stuff that's happened even in the past years while Trump has been president, some of this is better than Bad Girls Club and Baddies and Greenleaf. Because there's a lot of church drama out there too. Oh, so why should you care? I think you should care because this is a master class in how Washington actually works, where power is held, who has the say so if they really come to it. Because I think a lot of people think Congress is just this massive voting machine, but in real life, it's 535 people in a group chat that cannot agree on the font. I don't even know why that example came to mind, but it is 535 people that represent y'all. And a civic question that comes to mind is how much power should Congress actually have? And what should we be willing to sacrifice to be secured? And for me, that is not a Republican question. That is not a Democratic question. That is a civics question that we should be asking ourselves when legislation like this is presented. So, what did we learn? What did we learn? We learned Congress didn't just vote on surveillance this week. They voted on power and how things actually works. It gave us a very great depiction of how leadership works, committee politics, who's in control, and that members, rank and file members, had leverage this time. The bill lost. Welcome to the United States Congress. We've reached the end of another episode of Ashley Please. Thank y'all for watching. We learned about committee politics, leadership structure, how a bill goes from an idea to committee, what a committee actually is, what is the role of a committee chair, how some of them aren't smart and don't read bills, and how some legislators are smart and have well-intentioned ideas and goals while in office. We learned where money plays a part, party dynamics play a part. We learned some of the fundamentals that come with understanding how government actually works. Super excited to grow on this journey with you guys. Keep listening, keep sharing, all the things. However, before we depart, I will end each episode giving out an Ashley Please award to somebody that made me say, "What is happening?" This week's Ashley Please award goes to Delvin King. He is a poet that attended the Broward County, Florida board meeting. Let's take a look.
So I, I'm reminded of a song by Young Miami. And if Young Miami was here today, she would say, "Where all my scamming school board employees at? Spending that money fast. 20s, 50s, hundreds cash. Rachel Daly go in that go yard bag. Boosting employees, where y'all at? Stuffing those facilities in y'all bags just to flip it and pop some tags. Rachel Daly go in that go yard bag. Spin that shh. Spin that shh.
Yo, in so many comments to that, I actually said Delvin, please. Because first of all, as a preacher, I am sometimes on good days. Like, it's the introduction. That's the equivalent of there was a psalmist that said, What are you doing, Delvin? I also appreciate the relatability because Why are you reciting Carisha? This song is catchy. I've heard it a few times and I've randomly been in my car like, spin that. Spin that. Also, the end lets me know that he is a church boy. I mean, the whole thing absolutely points to he grew up in the church. He is currently in church, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has ministered before. However, the spin that ish. So I just say the word, oh, go sit down. Go sit down. Because what is happening? And I also think this is a good point to highlight. Google this. If you haven't remembered anything about committees and stuff, that's all important. Go back and watch that, take some notes, all of that. However, Google Hurricane Chris and the Louisiana State Legislature, I believe. Baby, when I saw Hurricane Chris say, "Hey, baby," on the floor, it blessed me so bad. It actually reminded me of my favorite Ayanla Vanzant episode of Hazel saying, "Pop, pop that, pop my butt," in front of Harriet Tubman. Because what are these lyrics? And for Hurricane Chris and Delvin, why y'all singing, quoting all these things on House floors, Senate floors, or even board meetings? So, Delvin, please spin that ish. Spin that ish. Y'all know what y'all can do? Y'all can spin this back. Like, subscribe, share with a friend. Remember, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio now. Thank y'all for watching. Ashley, please. And I hope to see y'all next time. Spin that ish.